Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Jacob Bates with us, and Jacob has his own company now in San Diego, but he has gone through a very interesting ride to get to San Diego. So Jacob, it's great to have you. I just would love to hear a little history of how you came from Salt Lake City and finally got to San Diego and became part of your own company called Rubix Commercial Real Estate.
Yeah, Bruce, thanks for having me on. Thanks for taking the time. It's a pleasure. Yeah, so my background, my real estate background began in Salt Lake City, where I was born and raised, doing global real estate very early in my career, in my late teens. That then took me around the world in 70 different countries over the last 25 years, stepping foot into 70 different countries, mostly office and industrial based product. But that took me to do global corporate real estate roles in Philadelphia and New York, and then eventually found my way into Portland working for Nike. And then found my way to San Diego about 10 years ago, where we started Common Grounds, which was a flex operating company, co-working company. WeWork being an example, maybe not the best example, but an example. Um, but we divested that in COVID, and then I went to JLL and built their flex and amenity management business, and then began my own business, Rubix, last year, which is a management consulting company for owners, operators, and occupiers, as well as we're currently a co-working operator across the country.
So tell me a little bit about the current market. You're in the co-working world, which kind of went through its ups and downs, shall we say?
A
And
little bit.
yeah, just a little bit. But it sounds like it's back on the mend, so to speak. So how's that world looking these days?
Yeah, it's actually doing better from a physical and revenue occupancy than traditional office these days. And it began its recovery earlier. And I think a big part of that is just where the world of work is and the whole remote work and the future work and the hybrid work playing a role into that. But, co-working has been around for 30 plus years, known as executive suites, maybe 50 years, right? Known as executive suites way back in the 80s, 90s gave it loosely that kind of co-working term the last couple of decades. But yeah, so what we've seen coming out of COVID, really, you look at 2023 as kind of the platform year where things began to go back the other way for co-working and flex businesses across the country. And we're seeing the foot traffic, the footfall that we see in co-working spaces has been and continues to outpace traditional office.
So are you seeing large corporations coming in and rather than leasing whatever 2,000 square feet, they decide, okay, we're going to go into flex space, into co-working space rather than having actual leases in fixed office buildings?
Yeah, I think, if I put my corporate real estate hat back on, we're seeing that a lot. We were using co-working 20 years ago as a head of real estate, but we're seeing them use it a lot more as they look at their portfolio strategy. They look at what is their workplace policy, how many days in the week, and trying to figure out how they accommodate different, employee needs across the country. But we're seeing anywhere from, a big enterprise company take a small 5% office to taking 10 offices, like our location in Pennsylvania. Or like Amazon, they took 100 plus thousand square feet from WeWork in New York recently. So we see it kind of that whole wide spectrum, but I would say the predominant user is probably the 80-20 rule, maybe 70-30 rule at this point, which is the predominant user are small businesses in the local market, startups, and entrepreneurs who are using these co-working spaces.
So are you seeing this as mostly sales folks out there, or is this developers or just people that are working remotely? I'm curious what the demographic is of people taking these spaces.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Everything from financial and professional services. You got accountants, accounting firms coming into these. You have startups in the tech world that are coming into them, entrepreneurs. But we're also, I probably see the biggest growth piece is remote and hybrid workers who are looking for an office outside of their home. And maybe their corporate provided office either is too far away or they just need a second or third location.
So I'm curious how you're finding locations. I mean, this must be an interesting marketing research project to figure out which cities. You said you're in, what did you say, Philadelphia or?
Pennsylvania, so we have locations in Philly, just outside of Philly, and in Philly, Chicago, DC, New York. Mostly the East Coast right now. We're working our way west towards California again, but we've kind of started there as we began to become an operator again in the co-working arena.
So are you thinking you're going to hit Denver, Phoenix, and then maybe West Coast, something like that?
Yeah, we're gonna take territory all over the place, everywhere, north, south, east,
Uh,
west, and everywhere in between. So we're coming.
So what's your business proposition that's, say, in competition to WeWorks? Why are you better than WeWorks? I'm curious.
I'd say it's a number of things. One, we're very owner centric. So we work on behalf of the owner. White labeling is a big differentiator. We're not married to any brand or product. And so some of our locations are locations we've actually taken over from WeWork or IWG or Serendipity Labs. But we're very product agnostic. Because we're white labeling it from an owner's perspective, that allows us from a differentiation perspective not to require the owner to give us a big tenant improvement allowance or put in a lot of capital to convert the space to be on brand or on product with certain thing. And we really can transition or take over or reboot spaces or build out spaces much cheaper than pretty much all of our competitors. So
Wow.
that's one major differentiation. Another differentiation is how we do the deal mechanics. Two places in the deal mechanics is one, creating a way where they can be valued in the capital markets, which a lot of owners have struggled with getting these agreements, especially as they transition more from leases to management agreements. How do you value them? And so we have some very unique deal mechanics around that. We also offer ownership, a lot like property management. Property management these days have a 30, 60, 90-day termination. We offer the same thing to our owners. If they get a 10-year lease from Amazon for the two floors we're operating, like we will convert it back to traditional, let them lease it to Amazon, do a traditional deal on 10 years because that's what's best for the asset.
Wow. Okay. So I'm curious, are you using Yardi or some other property management software to manage this? This has got to be very property manage intensive, I would think.
It is that has a lot of property management. There's a lot of similarities. It's actually probably more intensive than property management, accounting, and hands-on because it has a hospitality approach to it. And there's a lot of other things going on in a co-working space than what's going on in a building, which is more predominantly rent collection, tenant management, break fix kind of management. Whereas a co-working space, you have all of that, plus you have, the front end user experience, you have the hospitality going on, you have food and beverage, you have events going on, you have all kinds of other dynamics. Your contracts are shorter, your payment processing is more dynamic. So yeah, we use multiple different systems. Our predominant and preferred system is actually a company called Proximity.
Ah, okay. So that makes sense. So you basically have this kind of all wired, so to speak, and then how many of the spaces you go into are spaces that have been sitting vacant for who knows how long, a year or two, and the landlord saying, please come help us lease out this space.
Yeah, a couple of them, and some of them, they're built out, ready to go. They're either former co-working operations that went dormant, or they're even second gen occupier spaces that have a decent build out. And we can turn all of those on. We can turn them all on in under 60 days, get them going, get some cash flow in the door. Some of them require furniture, which we've got vendors and supply chain to handle that situation. But our goal is to get the space live, get it on the market, get cash flow coming in for the lowest possible cost to our owner, to our client.
So you must have some special marketing juice there. If you can take an existing dormant WeWork space and rev it back up again, it sounds like you have some special secret sauce to try and make that whole marketing work.
And that's probably one of the biggest things a co-working operator brings to the table is the know-how around sales and marketing, to bring the leads, to bring the customers, to get members to sign up. And that is a magic kind of formula within the digital world and how you go about it. There's some grassroots efforts there. There's some brokerage, networking, and relationships that have to be had as well. But a lot of it is digital and knowing what you're doing. We recently had an owner who was with one of the bigger brands for co-working, and we showed them how their search engine optimization worked against ours. And ours, while they're the big giants buying it, their per click is probably a lot less than ours. Our efficacy was significantly higher in driving the lead actually to the actual site to sign up and get a membership.
Wow. Well, that sounds like that people will be very interested in your product, particularly if they can label
It's
it.
very differentiating when, especially when the owners these days are spending, even if the operator's spending that money, the owners really, it's their money at the end of the day.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so showing them that, a lot of that money is going to pay for the big brand. And when you put your location into a search engine and it's not the first on the page, or when you actually click on the link that's fifth or sixth on the page and it's still not your space, you just paid for all that. And where ours is the first one on the page, it's the actual location. You can actually go there, you can actually sign up, you can get there. We maybe paid a little more for that first click, but we got the person who is looking for the space where they need to go. And I like to have the 14-second rule, which is, that in the digital world, the social media world, you have 14 seconds. And if you lose them in 14 seconds, it's all.
Wow, I did not know the 14-second rule. That is quite amazing. So you're basically saying the attention span of the normal person viewing a screen may be 14 seconds. If you don't get them in that first 14 seconds, you're basically toast.
14 seconds and click 3 clicks or less. If you don't accomplish that, it's over.
3 clicks or less. Okay. Wow. So it sounds like somebody in your firm, maybe it's you, has a special uh, expertise in search engine optimization and Google ads and that whole world of getting people to respond.
That's right. Well, we have to have that, right? My partner Scott runs a lot of that with the team, and he takes care of it. He's a wizard.
But it sounds like you're a pretty small firm. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I think one of the things we learned, with co-working, building our own co-working company with Common Grounds, advising some of the biggest brands in co-working, building it again at JLL, which is where we really tested a lot of interesting stuff and worked out a lot of the bugs, is we've learned how to operate co-working sites and co-working companies much more efficiently and effectively. Where you don't need 100 people to manage co-working sites. You don't need 5 people on every co-working site. There's things in the technology piece of it that can run it much more efficiently. And so we've learned all of those things and we're applying it to everything that we go into, which allows us to run, a good example is, most of the big brands, Industrious, IWG, WeWork, they're going to operate a space between, let's call it 18 and 25 bucks a foot. That's just the cost to run the site. That's not rent.
Wow.
That's not
Yeah.
building
Okay.
operating expenses. We are running them between 10 and $15 a foot.
My gosh. Yeah. Almost 50% of or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that's the owner's money at the end of the day when you really look at it, depending on if it's a lease or management agreement. Either way, it's the owner's money,
Yep.
and it's our fiduciary to do it the right way.
Well, I'm curious, are you using any virtual assistants?
So that is something that we're testing and we're seeing some success with. Is actually there's some smaller spaces that you can't. It's hard to add a physical body to a space less than 20,000 square feet in this business. But
Ah,
there's a lot of opportunity in the 5 to 15,000 square foot range in different markets, and doing those on the basis of without staff. So doing it very completely, digital and remote. There's technology now that allows us to do that. So we're testing that. We've seen it be successful in multiple locations, and it allows space to come on the market and create cash flow at a very, very low cost basis. And that applies to the 80/20 rule too. I get this question a lot from owners, like, well, how are you going to market and sell if you don't have somebody on site to do a tour? What we've learned in co-working is, again, 80% of the customers are the entrepreneur, they're the startup, they're the small business, and then 80% of those customers actually don't really ever use or need or want a physical person. Like they maybe interact with that person the first time to sign up, and they maybe
that's
barely,
it.
if not any, talk to them ever again. And so it's the other 20% that create all the problems. And so in those spaces, we just tell customers, look, if you feel like you're going to be somebody who needs daily interaction or weekly interaction with a physical person, this space probably isn't for you. And you should go to one of our competitors. Like that's probably better for
Yeah.
you.
Go see somebody else.
Yep.
So did they come in and they have an app on their phone and they click a
Yep.
door and they
It
come in?
unlocks and then they go and unlock their office and they got connection to the Wi-Fi. There's coffee and things other than that. We have janitorial coming in every day to clean it and make sure everything's good and ready to go. But it's space. It's physical space for your office, and that's what you're using it as. You can book conference and meeting rooms as you need them. So there's not overscheduling, and it works and functions basically the same way.
Wow, this is fantastic. So, okay, let's get into the idea. Is AI helping you at this point? What's happening with AI?
AI is really good at writing contracts.
Well, really good, and maybe you have to obviously be a little careful, but yeah, they are
Yeah,
pretty good.
I mean, it's good at giving you a template you can work with,
Yeah.
in tongue in cheek, but it's not there yet. I think it will be. I think
Mm.
the application in just commercial real estate broadly is coming, but I think it's more around right now. I still think the application is that, right, creating documents, maybe analyzing data. We're seeing some of that in terms of the analyzing data. I think the next thing we're seeing, and Proximity is doing a little bit of this, is having it auto book some of your rooms and needs as you create calendar invites. So that's a thing where we're seeing it there is probably some very low hanging fruit areas. Will it begin to take over and be more impactful? I think it will. But I think that's still a couple more years before we start to see true application in this industry.
Okay, okay. So speaking of the crystal ball, you're obviously bullish on this particular market segment. So what are you sort of projecting down the road here?
I think the next iteration for us is going to be to automate, more things like accounting, right? A lot of these co-working companies ended up with big corporate staffs. Accounting is one of them, and with all due respect, right? And you had to hire tons of accountants because we have tons of buildings going through. And I think that all gets completely automated where you meet, if it's a 5 to 1 ratio going forward. We're already operating at probably, half that, but I think we're going to be able to improve that significantly.
Mm.
In design, we're seeing that too. AI is helping a lot with design as we look at, first generation spaces and helping owners design. There is a science to the co-working design. It is a game of inches, but teaching, the AI models how to do that. And that's something that we've seen get better and better the last couple of years. So those are probably the areas I'd see it, in the next couple of years, really taking a much more firm hold on things.
So is the trend going forward that a person coming into a co-working space is more likely to want a locked office, or do they want just a workspace to sit at, any old workspace?
Great question. That is a fantastic question because there's a lot of like misnomers and misunderstandings in the industry, which is even today I'll talk to people and I think co-working is just an open desk in an open environment and that's what they're selling, kind of, but not actually what the product that the customer wants today. The customer wants four walls and a door. And so the office is four walls and a door is what sells. That's where the revenue is for the operator and the owner. And the open desk co-working, while that's a product in most sites, it's 5 to 10% of the space at this point, and it's four walls and a door. That's what we're selling.
Whoa, wow, that's a big change. I mean, we have a WeWork site across the street from us here that I've been in, and well, I guess I don't know right now. I haven't been in lately, but I would have said it was 50-50 or maybe 60-40 open space versus locked offices.
Yeah, so that's a big change. We are seeing some operators say that the open space is growing, but I think that's cyclical. Like if you go back to 2012, coming out of the financial recession, that was probably true then too, and why we saw a lot of co-working space have open plan and just selling desks. But you saw we were very quickly learned that the demand shifted to four walls and a door. And so I think we're in that same kind of cyclical, a lot of startups, entrepreneurs, remote work, hybrid work, going and just having a desk. How much of that will stabilize? We don't know yet. Probably bigger than it was in 2012. So maybe the five moves to 10 or 15% of the space, but you're still predominantly small offices, 1 to 4% offices, they fly off the shelves.
Oh, okay. So I'm just curious, this is a private office that just one person uses. It's not co-used by some other
Correct.
company.
Yep.
It's
They're the,
specifically for this particular person. This, yeah, okay, all right. So
yeah,
then,
they'll have their own access. They can lock it. No one else can open it. They can put their private stuff in there. It's safe. Yeah, and so you could end up with a company who takes, a 20% office or five offices to fit 20 people. Or we have customers who come in and say, "This is a nice big office that sits 6 people, but I'm just gonna put myself in there. I want a nice big office for myself." That happens too.
what's the average size of an office that you sell?
I mean, the average square feet for most operators are going to be like 50 square feet per person inside of the office. That's
Yeah,
basically
so
industry standard.
7 by 7 or something like that.
Yeah, you try to get close to a 10 by 10, but that's, now we're calling that a 2 to 3 person office, right?
Yeah, right. Okay. 20 people at 10 by 10. Well, I mean, that's not unheard of. Okay. So then we come kind of flip back to the comment you made way back earlier about that you could build out the space much less expensively than other people. So I'm curious how that happens.
One is the thoughtfulness through the design. And
Ah,
so thinking through the design, thinking through the materiality of the design, and then the supply chain. I think supply chain is a huge piece of it, right?
oh,
And
yeah.
being able to pull on the vendors, pull the right products from the right places. We're seeing construction costs. I think they've stabilized, maybe come down, starting to come down a little bit because
Ah,
we saw that skyrocket between 2020 and now. But it really comes down to thoughtful design. And I think a lot of co-working operators and owners who are building amenities, I mean, that's the other thing we haven't got into is amenity management, something we're doing as well, but designing and building amenities, you can go crazy. I mean, if you really want, you could spend $1,000 a square foot, you can spend $400 a square foot, but you don't have to. If you know
right.
like what, because here's the biggest thing, and we were guilty of this at Common Grounds, right? You can spend $400 a foot, doesn't mean people are going to pay more for that office.
Right.
That doesn't go hand in hand, right?
Doesn't do
So you
anything.
might as well spend 200 a foot, maybe it's 250 now, and sell it and get the market rate for it because they're not going to pay more for it. They're not going to pay substantially more for it. Maybe you get 10% more for it, but what does that mean compared to you spending 50, to 100% more in TIs?
Well, I assume this means you don't know this about me, but I spent 12 years in the interior design business. So
Mm.
I assume that means there's not a lot of glass wall in these offices.
No, a lot of glass. There's a lot of glazing. That's
Oh,
probably
there
the
is a lot
most
of glaze. Oh,
expensive
wow.
cost. Yeah. Now
Oh,
you can get thoughtful about that, right? Like you don't have to put glazing between all the offices. You really need
yeah.
glass fronts, right? That's really where you need the glazing and the glass. Demountable wall systems. We tested that a lot at Common Grounds. I think what we learned there is being more thoughtful about where those go and how you work that in as an architectural product. That creates some flexibility in the design as well, but they're expensive too. But the cost is getting better and better on those since the
Wow.
Common Grounds days. So
Well, okay, so do you take a construction team from, say, Philadelphia over to Pittsburgh? Do you use the same group? How do you work that into the product?
mostly we work with, since the owners of these buildings own the building, we're going to work with
Ah,
their team. It's really, we're going to bring the consultative design and the guidance around it with our design team and our project management team. But they've got their own vendors and contractors and, some of these
yeah,
buildings,
yeah. So,
they've got what they need. And so some of the buildings are union too. So you've got to deal with that. But it's really bringing, more of the art and the science to the design and the implementation of it.
yeah, because you've got the experience, the track record to show how this is all going to go together in a much more effective way.
Yeah, one of the things a lot of operators made a mistake on was they would go rent space, lease space from owners, ballpark, where's how much money can this space make? How many desks, offices can we fit in here? Sign the deal and then go to space planning.
Ah,
We,
ah.
we don't do that, right? We do it the other way around. How many offices can I fit through our thoughtful, art and design and science around it? And then how does that underwrite?
So what's the optimal size? You said you've got smaller ones at what was that, 5,000 square feet, but is 20,000 the better floor plate to work with? What's
20 to 30 is usually that's the sweet spot. That's where the
yeah.
economics make a lot of sense, especially on the TI build out, staffing, all of those things start to make much more sense at 20 to 30,000 feet. Again,
Wow.
efficiency too. If the floor plate is weird, you know,
Yeah.
that becomes hard. So
Yeah.
side core, very hard.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I think we could talk for another couple days. I think I would love to talk further about this, but let's pause for now. Maybe we need to reconvene in another 3 to 6 months and see what else is going out there in the
I love
world.
that.
Yeah, that'd be
Let's do
great.
that.
I think we have a lot in common here that we should talk further about. So, any rate, let's pause for now. Where can people get a hold of you, Jacob?
Best place, the email there on the screen, Jacob at rubixcre.com. That's the best place. You'll find me there or LinkedIn. Connect with me and we'll chat.
Yeah, well, I think there's probably a lot of property owners out there that want to talk to you.
Bring them on. Let's go.
Bring them on. All right. Well, this was very fun, very informative. We will pause for now and reconvene in 3 to 3 months or whenever.
Let's do it. It sounds great. Thank you, Bruce.
Talk to you soon.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.